Aisha, we've just learned from the U.S. military Central Command in charge of all U.S. forces in the Middle East that 2 American service members have been killed and 1 is still missing after an Iranian missile attack on a base in Jordan. Additionally, we've learned that 4 American service members were wounded. They were transferred to Jordanian hospitals and have since been discharged. This all coming last night after at least 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles fired from Iran hit a base in Jordan not long after U.S. Air Force personnel had arrived, part of President Trump's reinforcements, an F-16 squadron as well as an F-35 squadron. Of course, U.S. Air Force personnel are deployed throughout the Middle East. We've been heavily focused on the 2 U.S. Navy aircraft carrier strike groups that are in the Arabian Sea. The Air Force isn't as public about where it deploys its forces, but Jordan is a major hub, along with bases here in Israel, also Qatar, UAE, and of course in Saudi Arabia. But Jordan has been a major hub. So once again, Aisha, 2 American service members have been killed, 1 is still missing, and 4 were wounded in an Iranian ballistic missile attack on a base in Jordan last evening. It is the first American casualties in months since those 6 U.S. Army personnel were killed in the early days of the war in the attack on Kuwait.
So, Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong. You just got off the phone with the president. Give us some insight. What did he say during that conversation?
Xavier, that's right. We hadn't heard from the president yet about these deaths, so we decided to call him to see if he had a reaction. And that was the first thing I asked him, what his reaction was to the news of these 2 U.S. service members that were killed in Iranian attacks yesterday. The president telling me he finds it very sad. He says it's a very sad thing. We hate to see it happen. But then the president told me it's in service to our country. They're never going to allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And that's a line we've heard from the president before. We know that is his driving force that he has repeatedly said when it comes to this war in Iran. And I quickly asked him what he thought of Iran also saying this weekend that it no longer plans to follow that memorandum of understanding. The president telling me I couldn't care less.
What's up, family? So we got breaking news that changes everything about this Iran situation. And I'm going to break it all down for you in plain English. What really happened, what the media is lying about, what that deal actually said versus what they're telling you it said, right? And I'm going to say it again. What that deal actually said versus what they're telling you it said. And why President Trump has finally reached the point where he don't give a damn no more. And honestly, family, that's exactly where we need to be right now. So here's what went down. U.S. Central Command confirmed that 2 American service members were killed when Iran launched intermediate-range ballistic missiles at a U.S. military base in Jordan last night. 1 soldier is still missing. 4 more were wounded and had to be transferred to Jordanian hospitals. Now, let that sink in for a second. These are American men and women who signed up to serve this country. My heart goes to them and their family, and always thanking them for their service and their courage, who were stationed in Jordan as part of President Trump's reinforcement strategy, and they got hit by Iranian ballistic missiles, not some proxy group, not some militia they claim they can't control. Iran directly. And this wasn't some accident either. This came after 7 straight nights of U.S. strikes on Iranian targets. So what we're looking at right now is a full escalation. Iran matched us tit for tat, and now American blood is on their hands. And you know what President Trump said when a reporter asked him about Iran saying they no longer plan to follow that memorandum of understanding? He said, and I quote, "I couldn't care less." You see it on the screen, family. He couldn't care less. That's what he said. Now, family, when you hear the president of the United States say he couldn't care less about what Iran thinks about the deal, that tells you something. That tells you the gloves are coming off. And that tells you the patience has run out. Now, honestly, it's about damn time. You know what I'm saying? So I want you guys to check out this next clip.
We've seen from Kuwait, this ramp up of the war, John, really started on July 7th, last week, when President Trump attended the NATO summit in Ankara. Iran attacked 3 commercial ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz. 1 was from Saudi Arabia, 2 others from the United Arab Emirates. That brought the first wave of strikes on back-to-back nights. I'm told that a third strike was planned. That night it didn't happen. And then since then, we've seen 7 consecutive nights of strikes. The Iranians tonight are saying they launched this missile strike at the base in Jordan in retaliation for President Trump ordering attacks on Iranian bridges and airports. We've seen many drone attacks on Gulf allies in recent days. Dozens of drones have been fired at Kuwait, hitting that desalination plant and power plant in Kuwait. We've also seen Tomahawk cruise missiles being fired from guided missile destroyers, as you see here, and F-18 Super Hornets being launched from the USS George H.W. Bush and the Abraham Lincoln. But as the war has been ramped up once again, and the Memorandum of Understanding has been effectively scrapped, President Trump said in Ankara last week that the ceasefire is over. Iran seems to be matching the U.S. They're trying tit for tat. So as the U.S. forces continue to strike targets ashore, Iran is ramping up its strikes on bases in the region, particularly where there are U.S. servicemen. And once again, 2 American service members have been killed, 1 is missing, and 4 wounded. And there's been dozens of attacks in Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, in Qatar, at Al Dhafra Air Base. That's the largest in the Middle East. And this is the first time American troops have been killed in this war since March 1st. It's also the first time since January of 2024 that U.S. servicemen have been killed inside Jordan. Back then in 2024, it was an Iranian-linked terrorist group that fired that drone at Tower 22, John. Attacking Kuwait, John, we have a lot of U.S. assets there. We have U.S. Army firing HIMARS, surface-to-surface missiles from Kuwait. We also have Ali Salim Air Base, major transit point. Bahrain is home of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet. And in Jordan, a major U.S. Air Force presence. From a lot of our viewers, we've been focusing primarily on the Navy over the last 4 months of this war. But there's a large U.S. Air Force presence, certainly here in Israel and also next door in Jordan as well, John.
Lucas Tomlinson. Lucas, thank you.
They've been trying to kill Americans now for several weeks. We have been in this tit for tat and military operations with them. But I think last week, the president of the United States started to indicate that they had finally crossed the threshold that exceeded his patience and goodwill. I expected expanded military operations to start next week, but I think now the president is going to accelerate that to avenge those Americans and also to teach Iran a very important lesson that we will finish the job, we will bend them to our will, and this tragic loss of those 2 service members is going to prompt an acceleration of what I thought was an inevitable acceleration of excessive military operations in the future.
So what do you think went wrong here? Because, Joey brought this up as well, and I think Lucas did as well, is it raises the question about how many missiles and drones Iran has. Do they have more drones and missiles than we're aware of? Were they able to, backfill them during this ceasefire that we had in the last couple of weeks? Did we not have the proper defenses in place at our sites in Jordan? What do you think happened here?
Aisha, first of all, on the defenses, we have a layered defense system, which means that we've got a variety of systems that can defend against a variety of threats, from the high-end long-range ballistic missiles to the smaller drones and even local artillery fire. But even the best systems are not 100%. In fact, even Iron Dome in Israel, which is top of the line, had an intercept rate of something like 90 to 95%, which means 5 to 10% of threats get through. And I think here, from a defensive standpoint, we just see that if Iran lobs enough missiles and shoots enough drones, that some of them are going to get through. And that's why I said this was somewhat inevitable. And I do think this 3.5-month ceasefire period gave Iran a time to regroup. We still drastically destroyed several of their power projection capabilities, but they were able to reconstitute those to some extent. And I think now we're seeing the manifestation.
Now, let me take you back to how we even got here, because the media is already running cover for Iran and trying to make it seem like we are the ones who broke the deal. And I need you to understand what that memorandum of understanding actually said versus what these talking heads on CNN and MSNBC, now known as MS Now, are telling you. So the memorandum of understanding was signed a few weeks back. It was supposed to de-escalate things. Iran was supposed to stop attacking commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And we were supposed to lift the naval blockade. And the whole idea was that Iran could use this path to become a normal country to get their assets unfrozen, to potentially even join the Abraham Accords. That's what President Trump offered them, a chance to stop being a para state and start becoming a regular member of the international community. Dictatorship, para state, you get the point. And you know what Iran did with that chance? They kept demanding more. They said we were in violation because Israel never left Lebanon. They said we were going through non-pre-approved routes in the Strait of Hormuz. But here's the thing. I need you to really hear this because this is where the media is straight up lying to you. Nowhere in that memorandum of understanding did it say Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. Nowhere. I read the damn thing, okay? The memorandum of understanding said 4 things. 1, we would lift the naval blockade, which we did. We upheld our end. 2, Iran must use its best efforts to ensure safe passage for commercial ships. That doesn't mean Iran controls the strait. That means don't shoot at ships, okay? That's the bare minimum. 3, passage must be free of charge for only 60 days. It hasn't even been 60 days. 4, Iran and Oman were supposed to negotiate the future administration of the strait. That's it. There is no clause in there that says Iran gets to decide who goes through. There is no clause that says Iran can inspect vessels. There's no clause that says Iran gets to shoot at commercial ships because they are mad about what Israel is doing in Lebanon. None of that is in there. But Jake from the other side and these other leftist commentators are out here telling their audience that Iran was justified because the deal gave them control of the strait. And that is a flat out lie. And I'm tired of having to correct these people. And the memorandum was purposely ambiguous on purpose. It was a framework to negotiate a framework. We didn't give Iran anything. We said, here's what we'll do for the next 60 days. Let's see if you can act like a normal country, you think? And they couldn't even do that for 60 days. Can't negotiate with terrorists, right? They couldn't even make it 2 months without shooting at ships and killing American soldiers. So when people tell you we should try diplomacy again, I say try what? We tried it. Iran spat on it. They threw it in the trash. They chose terrorism over being a normal country. And now 2 American families are getting a folded flag because of that choice.
All right, guys, disastrous news. 2 more Americans killed in the Iran war. They were apparently killed on Friday. The Pentagon had been withholding that information, not surprising at all. They constantly are withholding and lying about information coming out of the war. As I was telling you last night, the number of attacks on our bases in Jordan, and these casualties also happened in Jordan. So 2 dead, 1 missing, 4 sent to the hospital. So that was in one wave of attack. There were the Jordanian casualties they talked about last night, which is, again, our casualties, American casualties in Jordan, a separate incident where we had a decent number of people injured. I believe it was 4 in that case as well. But again, these numbers are constantly changing because the Pentagon is keeping a lot of the numbers from us, and they're then tell us later, either a couple of days later or a couple of weeks later. So the current count right now is 16 dead and 420 injured so far in this war. So why is Iran attacking our bases? Well, obviously we're in the middle of a war with them. We've done 7 nights of bombing in a row. And so at this point, Iran believes that the war is 100% back on. Hard to dispute that, obviously, given what's happening here. So let's begin to tell you some of the things that we're seeing. So first off, Iran's supreme leader and Iranian state media are saying in a written statement that Mojtaba Khamenei, that's the supreme leader, that said that repeated U.S. breaches of the interim deal had shown that President Trump's signature was, quote, utterly worthless and devoid of credibility. So, if you follow American news, they kind of halfway tell you, oh my God, it's all Iran's fault. They kind of attacked us out of nowhere. They halfway say that. It's not, to be fair to them, in the 27th paragraph, they usually explain to you why Iran did it. And I read what I just read was from Reuters, and it was way further down the article as usual, but they've got the information there. That's partly how we get it and bring it to you guys. You just have to be devoid of all of the framing about how it's all Iran's fault. And by the way, like Israel's written out of all of these stories, right? So, but the reality is, Iran has said repeatedly, you were in constant violation of the memorandum of understanding for two reasons. Number one was Israel never left Lebanon. Israel kept attacking Lebanon and has gone further into Lebanon as we speak. So Israel was in complete violation of this deal is from day one, second one, minute one, and has never been in compliance. That meant we were not in compliance. Second thing that they said is you're going through non-pre-approved routes in the Strait of Hormuz, and you're doing that to try to create a second pathway, which would take away Iran's leverage. And that's why in the memorandum of understanding, it says that Iran controls the pathways through the strait. Now, you could be angry about that. I don't want Iran to control it. I want us to control it, or I want us to have an ability to have a second route through the Strait of Hormuz. Great. I want us to have a second path as well. But that's not what the understanding says. So if you're, looking to see who was right and who was wrong, or who violated the deal first, there's no question about it, guys. So Iran has done this thing where they are reacting very proportionally, and they have since day one. And in fact, the hardliners are now saying, stop doing that. They're saying internally in Iran, because they're constantly interpreted as a sign of weakness, right? Every time we only reciprocate and we only do it proportionally and we don't do as much as they do, they view it as, aha, we're stronger than them. And so, unfortunately, they're not overly wrong about that. That is how it's interpreted here. So, anyways, I don't want them to do any more. So I'm glad they're not doing even more than this. But look at all the damage it's already cost. And of course, the number one issue is we shouldn't be there in the first place. I'll come back to that. But for now, Iran is saying, since you were in constant violation of this deal, and by the way, and since you have now, so they hit the ships in the Gulf because of the violations. By the way, we'd been bombing sporadically anyway, right? So Israel says ceasefires don't apply to them at all. They're above the law. They don't have to follow any agreement, any peace deal, any international law.
So there you have it, right? And this is why I do the corrections. So now we're at the point where I don't want to hear nothing else about negotiations, right? Because nothing else about a new deal, nothing else about giving them another chance. I'm sick of it. Let me know if you're sick of it, guys, in the comments. I'm sick of watching American soldiers die while we sit around talking about what Iran might accept. You want to know what Iran accepts? Strength. That's the only language they speak. That's the only thing they ever responded to. When we bomb their bridges, they pay attention. When we hit their power plants, they start calculating. When we take out their IRGC commanders, they start reconsidering their choices. But when we negotiate, when we offer deals, when we show any sign that we're willing to compromise, they interpret that as weakness. They do. And then they push harder. And then they kill our people. And that's what happened here. The memorandum of understanding gave them a breather. It gave them time to regroup, to reconstitute their power projection capabilities that we had spent months degrading. And what did they do with that time? They rebuilt, they rearmed, and then they launched ballistic missiles at a base holding American servicemen. So I don't want to hear about proportionality. I don't want to hear about measured responses. I want to hear about finishing the job. I want to hear about taking them out. And I'm not talking about a few more nights of bombing. I'm talking about crippling them. Take their oil fields, take Karg Island, take their ability to fund terrorism. Take away every dollar they used to prop up Hezbollah and Hamas and Houthis, whatever his name is. Look, castrate them economically. Make it so that every time they think about killing an American, they remember what happens when you do. Because the only way this ends is when Iran understands that the cost of attacking us is higher than any benefit they could possibly gain. And right now, they don't believe that. They think they can hit us and we'll come back to the table. And they think they can kill our soldiers and we'll negotiate a new memorandum of understanding. President Trump made it clear with that. I quote it again. I couldn't care less comment that he's done playing. And I hope to God he follows through. And let me address something that's been bothering me about this whole situation. You got people in this country, Americans, who are rooting for Iran. You got leftist commentators. We just watched one. The so-called journalist on this screen right now, who's on the Turley Turks. His name is Zink. I don't know how to say his last name. That's on this screen right now as I'm speaking. You got leftist commentators and so-called journalists who are making excuses for an authoritarian regime that just killed our troops. They're out here saying, well, actually, we violated the deal first. You heard them. You literally heard them say that. They're saying, well, actually, Iran has a point about the Strait. They're saying, well, actually, maybe we shouldn't be there in the first place. And you know what I would say about that? Forget them, man. Forget them. Straight up. Forget them. I don't care about how much they cry anymore. I don't care about how many op-eds they write. I don't care about how many segments they do on CNN blaming America first. We are in this war. We didn't start it. Iran attacked commercial ships. Iran fired ballistic missiles at a base in Jordan. Iran killed our soldiers. And now that we're in it, the only way out is to win. That's it. There's no third option. You can't negotiate your way out of a war when the other side doesn't want peace. They're terrorists. You can't compromise with people who see compromise as weakness. The only thing that works is overwhelming, decisive, crushing force. And if you're an American who can't get behind that, if you're an American who would rather see your own country lose than see President Trump succeed, our president, he's still our president. You need to take a long, hard look in the mirror because you're not rooting for peace. You're rooting for America to lose. And that makes you no better than the people firing those missiles. I said what I said. Now, let me bring this home with some life wisdom because this is bigger than just one conflict or one president. What we are seeing play out between the U.S. and Iran is a lesson about human nature that applies to every area of your life. Because when you deal with people who have shown you who they are, believe them. Iran showed us who they are over and over and over and over and over again. And they attacked our allies. They attacked commercial shipping. They plotted assassinations. They funded terrorist groups. They chanted death to America. And yet there were people in this country who still believe that if we just give them a good enough deal, if we just offer them enough incentives, they would change. That's not how the world works, family. You cannot negotiate a person's character into changing. Where's that saying go? You could drag a horse to water. You can't make it drink. You cannot give enough to someone whose entire identity is built on opposing you. And that's the lesson here. Whether it's a country like Iran or a person in your own life who keeps showing you they can't be trusted. At some point, you have to stop offering chances and start protecting what's yours. At some point, you have to accept that the only language some people understand is consequences. And that brings me to scripture because I always like to close with something that puts it all in perspective. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 8 says, there is a time for war and a time for peace. And I want you to sit with that for a second because a lot of people, especially in the Christian community, hear verses about peace and they think that means you should always turn the other cheek no matter what. To be honest, the Bible talks more about war than anything. But that same book, that same chapter tells you there's a time for war. There's a time to stand up. There's a time to fight. And the wisdom is knowing which time you are in. And right now, we are in a time where American soldiers have been killed by a hostile regime that has demonstrated over and over that it does not want peace. That means it's time to finish the job. What other option can there be? Like, come on. Like, hear me. What other option can there be, family? Like, we're having a conversation. Surely. Let me know, because I'm always open to different. What could it be another solution at this point? And for the people who don't operate from a spiritual perspective, here's the same lesson in practical terms. Every relationship, every negotiation, every conflict in your life has a tipping point where continuing to offer chances stops being wisdom and starts being self-destruction. Have you ever seen when you want somebody, you can't convince somebody to respect you? You ever been in a relationship, whether it's a man, boyfriend, girlfriend, and you keep over explaining yourself to get someone to respect you, but they keep showing you out of disrespect. They don't care what you say to even acknowledge it and come to a clear understanding, to be on the same page, to have a better understanding together. That means they don't respect you or what y'all have. It's self-destruction at that point. You are destroying yourself trying to convince somebody to respect you and what y'all have, and you think that's supposed to work? At some point, that comes on the brink of delusion. This is not Princess and the Frog. This is not Disney movies. This is not none of that. This is not Disney World. You have to know when to walk away. You have to know when to protect what's yours. You have to know when talking is over and action is the only thing left. Iran has passed that tipping point. They killed our people. They're talking. The talking is over. Let me know what you think in the comments, family. Do you agree that it's time to finish the job, or do you think we should try diplomacy again? And I want to hear your perspective. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your post notifications so you never miss a breakdown. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.